Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Howard's Garage. And in this one we're going to talk about Chapter 9 and theories and practice of counseling and psychotherapy, which is the chapter on behaviorism. And behaviorism is proven to be, the behavioral approach, behavioral therapy is proven to be fairly effective, at least variations of it have, working with addiction, with an addicted population over the years. So we're going to talk about where behaviorism comes from, what it looks like, and how it's applied. And because we've got a lot to do, by we I mean I, I'm going to go ahead and get started sharing my screen right away, and we're going to clip right through this. So, behavior therapy. It is, well, I guess I ought to do my slideshow so I can see it better and you can too. Go back to the beginning there. The focus of behavior therapy, some of the beliefs that underpin this approach. One is very unique, but it's almost Freudian, that change can take place without insight, and that human beings, the thing that we should be focusing on with human beings is on directly observable behavior, because we can't always make a determination of what underlies it. We also look at current determinants of behavior, which are environmental, learning experiences that promote change, how we connect things together, tailoring treatment strategies to individual clients, and on rigorous assessment and evaluation. Behavior therapy also asks, and it's modern behavior therapy anyway, also asks from the very start that we consider the clients that we're working with, and to ethically ask ourselves, are we the right people to work with this particular client on this particular problem at this particular time? And if the answer is yes, we proceed. Otherwise, we look for alternatives. There are four key areas of development with a behavioral approach to counseling. Four key areas where counseling takes place. And one is classical conditioning. And classical conditioning is involved with stimulus and rewards, basically conditioning people, animals, organisms, whatever you want to call them, to operate in a certain way. Operant conditioning has to do with influencing the environment. Social cognitive theory brings thinking into the mix and learning, social learning. And cognitive behavior therapy involves as bringing both emotions and thoughts into the process of behavioral modification, which some of the more radical people like B.F. Skinner didn't believe that thoughts or emotions had a whole hell of a lot to do with why people behave the way they behave. Behaviorism in the beginning. This is a younger version of Ivan Petrovich Pavlov and his dogskis. In the 1890s and early 20th century, Pavlov became interested in how animals particularly, and people too, of course, reacted to things in their environments, how they connected the dots to get a clearer picture of what's going on in behavior, how they attached stimulus and response and created a reality for themselves out of this, and how external forces created a reality out of this as well. Initially, as we said, only behavior mattered. cognitions, what people thought about it, why they were thinking it wasn't important. Choices wasn't important. It's provide the proper stimulus and reinforcement, and behavior can be predicted, it can be created, it can be directed, and it can be controlled. This was pretty frightening, both philosophically and scientifically. But there's a great deal of truth to the way that these thinkers looked at this and explained what's going on in the world. We have control mechanisms all around us all the time. Church is a control mechanism, school is a control mechanism, the family is a control mechanism, etc., and so forth. And this was a big deal for the early behavioralists, particularly. Classical conditioning for Ivan Pavlov's dogs. Dogs salivate, and this is an unconditional response. You don't have to teach a dog to salivate. Just show him a steak or some dog food or something like that. They see food. This is an unconditioned stimulus. There's no training. You just show him the food, he salivates, and then he gets ready to eat, and he eats it if he possibly can. However, dogs may associate other stimuli, such as a bell. Now, a bell doesn't have anything to do with eating or with salivating, either one, right? I mean, it's a neutral stimulus. But if you ring the bell and then show the dog the food, and then he salivates, and you give him the food, he gets to eat it, he may associate that sound of the bell with getting to eat. So when he hears the bell, now even without seeing the food, he starts to salivate, and that becomes a conditioned response. He's been conditioned to salivate when you ring the bell because he associates it with food. Easy peasy, huh? Some reinforcements here. This is not a totally comprehensive list, but if you're going to do classical conditioning or operant conditioning, either one, come think if you're going to do any kind of behaviorism, you have to think about this. But some reinforcements, and they're not totally comprehensive. Positive reinforcement, something desired or appreciated. You do something and you get a reward. You get an attaboy or attagirl from mommy and daddy. You get a gold star when you're in kindergarten and elementary school. You get a commendation if you do something cool in the service or at work. You get a raise or a bonus. These are all positive things that's to keep you involved and keep you doing the behavior that whoever's rewarding you wants you to engage in. A negative reinforcer, and this is different. People think of negative reinforcement as punishment. It's not necessarily. Negative reinforcement is more like, you put on a coat when you go outside, not because you're cold now, but because it's going to rain, and the temperature's going to drop today. You go to work not because you particularly want to, but you don't want to be homeless. You want to pay your rent, right? So there are negative consequences that you're going to try to avoid. And you may not be experiencing them now, but you've experienced them before, so you try, to avoid them in the future by doing what you do now. Positive and negative in behaviorism confuses people sometimes when they first encounter it. Suppose I catch my little granddaughter who's 7, and I catch her out behind the house smoking a cigarette. And, there's a couple of things I can do. I can, and probably what I'd really do would be, to take her cigarette away and go off on her and give her a big lecture and all that kind of good stuff. But suppose instead of doing that, I told her, Mila, I'm so proud of you, baby. I didn't think you were ever going to start smoking. Come on, let's go on into town. I'm gonna buy you a whole carton of cigarettes and a couple of beers too. We're gonna have a great time. is that a positive or a negative reinforcer? I heard two answers out there. Is a negative reinforcer in it if you mean, is it good for Mila that I'm doing that for her? Or to her, really, in this case, because it's not for. Is it good for me to give her things that will hurt her? Good for her. No, it's not. And it's not good for me either. It's not a good situation in any way you look at it. But it's not a negative reinforcer. The consequences of what I'm doing will be negative. The types of things that I'm doing certainly is negative. It's not admirable. But the reinforcer for Mila is admirable because she knows I love her and she loves me and she is desirous of hearing good things from me about herself, etc. And so when I tell her, I'm so proud of you because you've finally started smoking, that's a good thing for her. That's positive. She will do things to get more of that type of reinforcement. It's a negative consequence. It's not healthy for her. It's not good for her. But if I lived in Germany in the 1930s and I told her, Granddad's so proud of you for turning in that Jewish family that was hiding next door. You're such a good little German girl. That's a positive reinforcement. The situation isn't positive. So when you consider this, think about that because it's important. Punishment are consequences that result in a decrease in undesired behavior. I don't want you doing this thing. I don't want you, playing on your Game Boy when you're supposed to be doing your homework, so I take your Game Boy away from you. I restrict you from it for a week. You can't play it. The whole purpose of that, and people will say, well, wait a minute, I don't call that punishment, I call that a natural consequence. Okay, it's a natural consequence, but it feels like punishment. And what it is it's a punishment that, even though it's a positive punishment, but it's a natural consequence simultaneously. But the whole purpose of introducing this consequence is to decrease the kid's playing on a Game Boy when he should be working, right? I can also remove something from them that I can add something to it. I can give them a spanking, give them time out. I can remove something by taking away the Game Boy. That. Another factor in reinforcement is a non-reinforcer or a neutral reinforcer. We talked in another class about what creates a high addiction potential in a substance, and the short-acting drugs that hit you fast and wear off quickly are the ones that tend to produce the highest addiction potential. But suppose you took this drug that I'm selling you, and you went home and you cooked it up and you put it in a syringe and you shot it into a vein and nothing happened. Nothing happened. No thing. You didn't get a rush out of it. You didn't get sick from it. You didn't have a positive effect. You didn't have a negative effect. Just nothing happened. Or you snorted it and nothing happened. Or you ingested it in a pill form and nothing happened. Grace Slick's Lament in White Rabbit. One pill makes you larger and one pill makes you small, but the ones your mother gives you don't do anything at all. Go ask Alice when she's 10 feet tall. The drugs that we use, we want to have a reinforcement. If we don't get a payoff, if nothing happens, then that doesn't predict that the behavior will be re-engaged in. We won't do it anymore. Sporadic reinforcement's what we see here with this young woman and her friend. Obviously, something really good just happened on the slot machine. She's happy about it. For those of you who like to gamble, and I'm not going to go off on you or anything, but you know that it's a lot of fun when you win. It's a lot of fun when you win, and you get a rush from having the machine light up just the right way, and there's a payoff. But it doesn't pay off every time you do it, and you don't lose all the time consistently either. You win enough to keep you in it. And the chances that you're going to win here in a minute keeps you pulling the handle. And so sometimes winning at the slot machine keeps you at the slot machine more than never winning does, right? But it also keeps you at the slot machine more than always winning tends to do, oddly enough, because we like the possibility of not being able to win. Those are reinforcers. And sometimes these things don't seem to be that closely related to one another. We'll talk about that later. Dr. Watson and little Albert moving into the 1920s, another case of classical conditioning. That's little Albert, by the way. That's really him. He's a year old. And as you can see, there's a fuzzy little bunny rabbit that he has there with him. And little Albert liked he was first presented with a white rat, and he wasn't afraid of the white rat. In fact, he was attracted to it. He wanted to hold it and pet it and stuff like that. But you see the hammer here. Just about the time Albert got into holding his white rat, they smacked a gong behind him and scared him right out of his little jammies there, and made him cry. It scared him. And after he was exposed to this 2 or 3 times, they would give him something fuzzy, something, a bunny. They'd show him a Santa Claus or something like that. And and then they'd scare him. And he began to associate fuzzy things with frightening events. And so all you had to do was show him a mouse or a bunny or a doll or a Santa Claus, and he'd go all hysterical on you. If nothing else, this illustrates the need for ethical guidelines and research, because teaching little Albert to fear the fuzzy that way basically is child abuse. And now he's afraid of Santa Claus, and you can see there that the doctor puts on a mask and little Albert flees. He tries to get away from it. Dr. Watson, by the way, claimed that later on that he had extinguished the fear response with little Albert by I keep trying to call him Little Abner. I've read too many Al Cap comic books, but that he extinguished this response. But what we know about this is childhood trauma, and it may have lasted this child his entire life, to have been exposed to this. And this is B.F. Skinner. He's a very radical behaviorist. He said, basically, there's no such thing as free will. You just think you have it. You don't. You have been conditioned to be who you are, where you are, why you are, what you are your whole life. And you think you have choices in things, but you really don't. Human beings are organisms reacting to stimuli in the environment, and we can change who you are by providing different stimuli. And we provide the different stimuli, and now here's where it's key. It feels to you like you're changing who you are, but you're not. We already know who you are. We're revealing it by doing this. Our choices are limited by biology and other deterministic forces. And we mistake these predetermined conditioned responses that we're going to engage in automatically, when confronted with the proper stimuli. And we mistake that as somehow controlling our own destiny and making our own choices and things like that. Oh man, this is gloomy bush art. This is almost like going back to Freud. And it kind of is, because Freud was a determinist and so was Skinner. Classical conditioning entails the idea that respondent behavior is elicited from a passive organism. In your course room, I've got you a little clip that's it's a little over 5 minutes long, I think, from Stanley Kubrick's A Clockwork Orange. He, based on the book by the same name, but this is Malcolm McDowell as Alex. He's the teddy boy in Kubrick's futuristic vision of London 50 years ago. The clip is about little Alex being cured. Alex is a vicious little bastard. He engages in all kinds of, he's a bully, he's a rapist, he's a murderer, he's a thug of the highest order, street gang leader, all that kind of good stuff. He catches a 14-year sentence for having murdered a woman that he and his droogs, his friends, had raped one night when they broke into her house. And in order to get out of prison, he submits himself to a behavioral modification program called the Ludovich technique. And in the Ludovich technique, you can see in the picture here on the right, he's not really enjoying it all that much. He's got these clips that hold his eyes open and his head strapped down, and he's got these sensors on his head to measure his brain waves, and they're taking his blood pressure and registering his breathing and all of this stuff. The researcher is putting drops in his eyes where he won't dry out, but he's in a position where he has to look at a screen in basically a movie house in the prison. And they show him scenes of violence, rape, murder, concentration camps, all these horrible things that always excite Alex. And every time he gets excited, they administer a drug that makes him sick until he's finally horrified by these images. This is also, this type of behavior can also be referred to as aversion therapy, which has been used before with substance users. But little Alex was cured through all of that, except he wasn't all that cured. So now when an opportunity to voluntarily participate in sex presented itself, he couldn't. When he was back out on the street and being victimized by people he used to victimize, he can't defend himself. He couldn't. Anytime he's moved to violence, having a violent feeling, he gets sick. They didn't control carefully the stimulus response, which is necessary, because at the time they were doing all of this behavior modification with Alex by the conditioned stimulus and the conditioned response, they accidentally conditioned something else into him. While they were showing him these films, they were playing Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. And Beethoven was Alex's favorite composer, so that he discovered when he got out he couldn't listen to Beethoven anymore. He got sick. Oh, horrors. Anyway, I put a clip on there of Alex, and it's actually the clip is titled Psychology in Clockwork Orange, or Classical Conditioning in Clockwork Orange. I forget which, but anyway, look at it. I may give you an assignment there to respond to it. Operant conditioning It's like classical conditioning, except whereas you're being conditioned to respond to things in certain ways, with operant conditioning, you're learning how to manipulate the environment, like tying your shoes, or learning how to eat with a fork without looking like you've been slapped in the face with a porcupine, doing it safely. I learned to drive on a standard shift vehicle, and I had to learn to push in the clutch, put it in gear, give it some gas, let the clutch out, know when to push the clutch in again, when to shift the gear, how to brake coming up to a stop sign, how to get it downshifted, all of that kind of good stuff. And it was a real exercise in concentration. I had to think about everything I was doing all the time when I was first learning how to drive this car. And I still would bounce it to a stop sometimes, or kill it trying to take off, bounce it to a stop. And I got better, and I got better, and I got better until I had done it so many times and over such a period of time that I could shift through the sequence of gears and I don't think about it. I downshift without thinking about it. I know how to shift to come up to the intersection, to the stop sign or what have you, and it becomes automatic. That's operant conditioning. And operant conditioning is something that we all learn how to do along the way, but it can also be something that we make a predetermination that we want people to learn. Things like social skills, things like assertion training, things like learning how to communicate better, say what you want, things like how to, I don't know, lots of stuff is about that. We're doing operant conditioning when we're teaching people how to cook. We're doing operant conditioning when we're teaching people how to dress themselves. We're doing operant conditioning. We do operant conditioning all the time. We just don't think about it as such. Throughout the 50s, behavior therapy exploded all over the place. South Africa, Europe, Great Britain, the United States. And at the time, it was displacing the old psychoanalytical approaches to counseling and psychotherapy. And this guy, an American, Albert Bandura, came up with social learning theory, and the social cognitive movement was born and advanced under him, and people like Aaron Beck and Donald Meichenbaum and some other theorists who moved it forward. A good example of social learning approach here with Pavlov's cat. He never could get it to drool, right? But while he was trying and ringing his bell, the cat learned that he could ring the bell and Pavlov would pour him some food and drool. I don't know if that's true or not, that's just funny. Reciprocal interactions between the individual's behavior and the environment. It's an interchange of things, and I learned that. I can learn to get certain things and avoid certain things, modify behaviors to my best interest, all that kind of good stuff. Perceptions then become important, and basic self-direction is assumed because I can perceive what gets me what I want better, and if there are those disruptions, in my boundaries or whatever, I can make adjustments and bring myself back to a state of homeostasis. Little Albert gets his bone. That's still little Albert. This is his bone. That is some kind of bone, huh? But my point is, drug use is a learned behavior. You put little Albert in that room with that bong and all the fixing that he needs to get him a nice good high out of it, and he can't do it. Well, he couldn't do it anyway. This is a ludicrous example, but I'm doing it because I kind of thought it was funny. Someone would have to teach Albert how to put water in the pipe. You ever tried to teach a 1-year-old how to do something like this? Yeah, it could make it onto America's Funniest Videos right before you were arrested for child abuse. But someone would have to teach Albert how to put the water in the pipe. He wouldn't know what to do with it. Someone would have to show Albert how to load the bowl with the weed, right? Someone would have to instruct Albert how to light the weed because he wouldn't know how to do it on his own. Someone would have to teach Albert how to inhale and from where. How to inhale it, how to hold it in and cook it, holding the smoke inside before you go, right, etc. He'd have to learn all that. He wouldn't know that a priori. He wouldn't know how to cook up a shot of heroin. He wouldn't know how to use a crack pipe. He wouldn't know, He'd probably instinctually know unconditioned response to go to his mouth with pills or with a drink of alcohol, but he had learned from that experience if he survived it and probably wouldn't do it again. He'd also have to learn how to handle the effects because, that's what you do a drug for, right? Cognitive behavior therapy came along. Actually, it emerged back in the 60s too, but it really took off in the 90s. And this is used a lot in therapeutic communities. If you were to go to Senecor or into Safe P or some other program for offenders or homeless, residential places, all of that stuff. They use a lot of cognitive behavior therapy in there. And cognitive behavior therapy emphasizes cognitive processes and private events that are mediators and affect behavioral change. And what people believe influences how they act and feel, so that these things inform one another. And behaviors create emotions, emotions drive behaviors, both of them affect the way you think about things, how you think about things, affect the way you feel. So this whole process is self-interactive and self-directive. And if you're going to affect behavioral change, then you have to affect thoughts and behaviors, emotions, and attitudes as well. So you'll see this in a number of forms as you go through professional life and the treatment and prevention fields. But this is what we address to affect behavioral change through a cognitive approach. Some behavioral components and techniques that you'll run across. I probably should have said some behavioral components and realities here for these, because these really aren't technique-y. Functional assessment, behavioral analysis. The current environmental events that maintain problem behaviors have to be identified. I guess that is sort of a technique. And you identify that through the functional assessment. And these environmental events are the ones that maintain problem behaviors. You have to identify what the problem behavior is if you want to fix it. And the clients produce behavior change by changing those events, not the counselor. Clients have to be active in defining as well as resolving the problem that they hope to change. We have to articulate it, have to identify what it is, have to speak it into being, basically. And then behavioral interventions are individually tailored to specific problems experienced by the client, whatever those might happen to be. Then if you're going to name it and claim it, is where you get started with this approach. One, you identify the problem. Two, you own the problem. Then you formulate a strategy for dealing with it. You implement the strategy, evaluate the process, and then you let it go. It's easy peasy, right? Not so much, maybe sometimes. You create goals, and the goals are things that you identify as possible methods to get to the outcome that you want to get to after you've identified the problem and put a name on it. The goals should be established one at a time. They should be clear. You should understand them, you and your counselor both. They need to be concrete. They need to be understood. And they need to be agreed upon by the client and the counselor. And if you've got all of that stuff going on, then you got a good goal. So why does my client never complete the goals we have on his or her treatment plan? Why don't they do what we've agreed that they ought to do? Well, the answer is they're probably not his or her goals. If you have a client who's consistently not doing what y'all have agreed that he or she should be doing, it's probably because what y'all have agreed to is probably your idea of what he or she should be doing, and it's not important to them. Couple of things about goals, and particularly when you're putting together a treatment plan or an approach, and I think this is critical to helping clients invest in their own recovery. If I'm setting goals for people, one of the first things I'm going to do if I'm setting goals with people, let me put it that way, that's what I should have said, not for, but I'm going to push them toward accepting some goals that I want in there that I know for a fact is attainable, that is easy for them to do, that they can, if you don't have a job, maybe my goal will be get some one ads and look in the one ads and circle 3 places that might give you a job, and pick one day this week and call all 3 of those places and see if you can get an interview. That's all. Not get an interview and go to an interview, just call those 3 places and see if they'll give you one. And then they come back and they can report back, yeah, I did it. And then I can use affirmations and stuff like that to point out to them that they're taking an important step in their own recovery, etc., and so forth. At the same time, I might be prone, because of my experience, say, in 12-step programs, if the client comes in and tells me, well, I'm doing this for my wife, man, because she thinks I have a problem, and, she's on my back all the time, and I don't think I really have a problem, but, with drinking, but I have a problem with her. And then I might be tempted to say something along the line of, well, brother, that won't work. You got to do this for yourself. This is something that you got to want for you. And that's not true, by the way. If you're coming in here to save your marriage, or to stay out of jail, or to keep your job, or to get out of financial crisis, or any of that stuff, I am fine with that as a goal and as a motivation. I'll be happy to work with you. I think is a perfectly good thing. You don't have to want this just for you. Hopefully, during the process, you'll get there, but it's not that particular thing. And goals have to be attainable. I had a client back in when I first started as a counselor. This guy was nearly 40 years old. And every time the Oilers had their open practice, and he'd been doing this for years, he'd go try to make the team. And he was like a linebacker. And he was too little to be a linebacker. And he was too slow to be a linebacker. And he was hurt a lot trying to be a linebacker because he's getting clocked. And basically what they were using him for was, a live target, a practice dummy, whatever you want to call it. And on one hand, I don't want to tell people this is something that you can't do, but on the other hand, when I ask him what would it take, what do you need to do, how could you become this person that you want to be? You're nearly 40 years old. You need to grow another 8 or 9 inches. You need to put on another 70 or 80 pounds. You need to develop this much more speed. You need to do this, that, or the other. And the goals become not realistic at that point. So when we're working with our clients, their goals have to be realistic. And if you put their realistic goals on there and the goals that are meaningful to them, some of the things that they want, and help them get something that's attainable, that they can see in black and white, that they have taken steps and done things, they'll invest. There are ABCs of change that behaviorism looks at. A is the antecedents. These are things which cue or elicit certain behaviors, a conditioned response, right? We have those all the time. I am one of the world's worst with conditioned responses, The police turn their lights on behind me. I haven't gotten high in nearly 40 years, but the police turn their lights on behind me to pull me over for something. The first thing I'm doing is looking for something to throw out the window. I haven't had anything in my car I needed to throw out the window in a long time, but that's still a conditioned response. So behavior is the antecedents cue us, and then the behavior emerges. These are the things that people do in response to the cues that we have. And that leads to consequences and the events that follow the behavior. And so if our behavior keeps getting us in trouble, the consequences, then we need to change the way we respond to the antecedents if we're going to be able to influence the consequences. Behaviorists who are taking an approach to working with client insist that therapeutic procedures be proven effective through objective means. And that means that someone who is not invested one way or another can objectively look at this without being biased and saying, yep, that works, or nope, it doesn't. And those things that do work become empirical. And the things that become empirical are basically what we're referring to as evidence-based practices today, or evidence-based techniques, or evidence-based programs, or evidence-based outcomes. So interventions should be empirically supported. Evidence-based practices are highly valued. We've tried these out, they've worked. They've worked again and again and again and again when they've been used, so it wasn't a fluke. Both treatment and prevention fields place a great deal of value on evidence-based programs and outcome. You'll know that if you wind up in a position where you're writing grants or justifying expenditures or whatever. There are some techniques that came out of behavioral therapy that have been employed in a wide range of settings to work with a wide range of clientele with a wide range of problems. And some of these common ones are things like progressive muscle relaxation. Substance use disorder clients can be terrifically uptight people. We have used our drugs to self-medicate, to relax, to go to sleep, to do all kinds of crazy things, all kinds of practical things, really, as well as crazy things. But we've used our drugs this way, and it's amazing how when we sober up, we can still be uptight. We're jumpy, we're nervous, we don't get along with people, we're grouchy, we have trouble sleeping, we have trouble relaxing. And there are some behavioral things that you can do to relax. My sponsor used some with me. And I knew that I had some issues like this when I went fishing with a guy in Arizona, and he told me I was running back and forth we were on Lake Powell, and I was running back and forth between 2 or 3 riding reels I had thrown over the side of the boat, and checking and stuff, until the guy told me, he said, "Damn it, man, sit down." He said, "Howard, do you know you even fish hard?" And I'm like, "What?" He said, "We're supposed to be chilling. We're out here to relax, and you're fishing hard. Quit it." My sponsor made me do some things. These are behavioral techniques. One of them was I had to go to the swimming pool down with sunblock, of course, and with an alarm clock. And so I'm sitting there with my alarm clock under the chair with the alarm set for an hour. And my goal is to do absolutely nothing for an hour, but to sit in the sun, and of course roll over so that I didn't burn, and just sit there, not plan anything, not really think anything, not read anything, not work on anything, just relax in the sunshine. And I thought I was going to die. That's just not how I roll. So I was very grateful when the alarm went off. And I was able to go back to being nuts and stressing and stuff like that. So progressive muscle relaxation is a way to help clients relax. And what you do is you start at the bottom and go to the top. Have them roll their toes, sit down, get comfortable in a chair, cut the lights low, not necessarily off, and you can do this with a metronome or with some relaxing music or whatever, and you have people tense and release, tense and release, tense and release until they're aware of what they're doing with their muscles. And you move up from the toes, through the feet, to the calves, through the thighs, to the butt, and all the way up to the top. One of the things that's true is with human beings is that we carry a lot of tension in our head. I run around with my brows knitted and frowning all the time, and I've got my teeth gritted and my tongue's pushing up to the roof of my mouth, and I have to learn how to relax those muscles too. And progressive muscle relaxation is a way of doing that. It's described in the book, but you can also look at it on YouTube. You can see how progressive muscle relaxation takes place. And I misspelled desensitization. I thought that looked funny when I typed it, but it just now is striking me. Systematic desensitization is, let's say you're afraid of snakes, and the scariest possible thing that you can think of is to hold a live snake in your hands. Well, that's pretty scary, right? Have a live snake held in your hands. Well, that's what I'm thinking too. But what's the next scariest thing? To be in a room with a snake? Next scariest thing seeing one on TV. Next scariest thing is a rubber snake. Next scariest thing is seeing a shoestring or a cord or a piece of rope, thinking snake and scaring yourself with it. You list these from most unsettling to least unsettling, and then you invert them and work them backwards. I'll have you do muscle relaxation while doing visual flooding of, not necessarily flooding, but visualization of that rope that of the snake. I'll have you doing your breathing, your muscle relaxation. I'll give you a cue, like a raised thumb or something like that, where you can tell me when you don't have an anxiety response anymore. And we'll just do this until we work through all the different levels of your anxiety to the point where you should be able to hold a live snake without freaking out. In vivo disposure, I just throw you in a box of snakes. And if I want to flood you, I'll leave you there for hours. Not that brutal. But in vivo exposure is exposing yourself to the thing that you're afraid of. And consistently in real life. I'm afraid of heights, or I was afraid of heights when I went to work for Brown and Root. And I was a welder's helper, and one of the things I needed to do was go up on structures that were being built out at the marine construction yard. I was building offshore drilling platforms. So I was afraid to go up the scaffolds and up to the top, and I avoided it. Oh my God, I avoided it as long as I could. And then this old dude named Rex, he kind of took me under his wing, and he said, "You're going to work with me." And he said, "We're going to get you over this." And the way he got me over it is that he would have jobs for me to do, but he would take me up 12 feet, which is exactly one of the scaffold levels every day, 8 feet, I mean. And I'd go up that scaffold every day, that much higher, until after about a week and a half, I was up at the top of the lower end of the structure, and systematically moving up, in vivo exposure, in real time, working and doing what I'm supposed to do, until I was comfortable doing that. If you put me back out on that job today and said, go up that scaffold, I might have to go over that again. It might take me a little while because I've been away from it a while. But in vivo exposure, and because I've been conditioned to it before, I'd probably have a conditioned response that it wouldn't take nearly as long this time to get used to being back in the air. In vivo flooding is, involves both imagining and in real life situation where you just you expose yourself to the things that you're afraid of for some protracted periods of time. EMDR is eye movement procedure where you're being asked to do imaginings, and you're doing things that have been traumatizing for you in the past, experiencing your anxiety responses that are coming back, and being directed by your counselor who's exposing you to this for protracted periods of time and then pulling you back from it. And it's an effective way to change behavior and to deal with past traumas and things like that. But it's a complex procedure, and it shouldn't be used by people who aren't trained in it. You can see examples of this also on YouTube. YouTube, guys, is your friend. Any of the stuff that I'm talking about, you can go type it in on Google or onto YouTube and find examples of it. Other techniques, these are the ones that we use a lot of, that substance abuse counselors use a lot of. Social training skills. A friend of mine who worked at in a therapeutic community said that it's erroneous to say that we are rehabilitating our clients here, because we're not. We're habilitating people who've never been habilitated in the first place. I have clients here who have never had a driver's license, never owned a car, never rented an apartment, never had a bank account, never paid taxes, never registered to vote, never voted. They don't know how to live. They don't know how, and that goes into self-management too. But social skills training is a part of that. They don't know how to go out to eat. They don't know how to talk to people. They don't know how to fit in, and so we teach them. At Centacor, one of the things they used to do is they teach people how to dress and how to talk. So if you came, you might go into Centacor with a pair of cut-off shorts and some old, top sides on, but you might come out of there wearing a suit and tie, and they expect people to present themselves well. They teach you how to eat. They teach you how to, everything. How to develop skills for job interviews, all that kind of good stuff. So social skills training is necessary. I don't know about some of you, but when I sobered up, I was like 32, and then I got divorced, and then I had to start figuring out how to date again, and I didn't have any dating skills. I mean, I was sober. You want to go up to my place and do a couple of lines wasn't the way you did it anymore. So people who are trying to change the way that they are living often need some instruction in terms of help. So social skills training is important. Self-management, helping me to see trouble points for myself. Helping me to assess how things are going for me. Are things is what I'm doing right now helping me to be who I want to be right now and getting the results that I want right now? Where am I falling down? And this isn't for me to beat myself up with. I've been doing a lot of that, because I'm a drug addict, and that's what we do to ourselves. But being able to evaluate what's working and what's not working, and how I'm feeling, and am I satisfied with it, and what could I do better, and all of this kind of good stuff. It's self-regulating, really. Self-directed behavior is into that too, where I'm trained how to decide what I want to do in any particular situation, and where I want to go, and how I want to proceed, and if that is something that is satisfying to me. A thing about deciding, guys, about taking new steps and doing new things and trying new things, is you can decide that they're good and they work for you, but you can also decide that they're not working for you and they're not getting you where you want to go, and you can redecide. And there's where the self-direction comes in, making adjustments for that, in vivo, as a matter of fact. Assertion training. I used to love assertion training, because assertion training, you can tell people who've been through assertion training when you meet them in the hall and you say, "Morning, Bobby. Nice day, isn't it?" And Bobby says, "Don't tell me what kind of day it is. I can look out the window for myself." And I can say, "Aha, assertion training." That's really not assertion, Bobby. That's aggression. But, baby steps, eh? Assertion training is based on a certain premise. You have the right to feel and perceive and think any way you want to feel and perceive and think. That's yours. And you have the right, but not the obligation, to share this with other people if you want to. At least until they tell you don't, right? So I have the right to ask people for things, and they have the right to ask me for things, and I have the right to make statements of belief and things like that. And people have a tough time being assertive. We have a tough time saying directly what's on our minds most of the time without it coming out in a bad way. Assertion training is particularly helpful with people who are coming out of treatment, and you're teaching them refusal skills for when they go back into their old environments, which most of them probably will. There is no doubt, and it's, like I said, I've been clean for nearly 40 years, and I still run across people I used to get high with, and some of them still get high, So the opportunity to get high, and the invitations to get high haven't gone away. People still offer me drinks in social situations and things like that. And I just basically I refuse them, and I tell them, no, I really don't drink. And now, after all this time, people usually leave me alone with it. But there was a time when people, especially if I knew them, would be, come on, man, one won't hurt you. Shit, what's wrong with you? And you have to be able to say, what part of no, don't you understand? You have to be able to assert yourself. Assertion training is tricky because if we're training people to speak what's on their mind and to set limits and all of that kind of good stuff, we do it in such a way that they come across as being, directive. This is the way it is. Thank you. I don't want to drink. Without being, mean or putting people down, still respecting the rights of other people. And one of our texts that we use, I can't remember which one it was, the one on assessment, the assessment text, that said there was a thing in there where he talked about a person in a restaurant and gave an example of several types of responses. There is the passive response where, the waiter comes up and says, everything all right over here? And you say, yeah, everything's fine, and the waiter goes away. But the coffee's cold, but you drink it anyway, and the meat's too tough, but you eat it anyway, and the vegetables aren't cooked right, but you eat them anyway. And then when you leave him a tip and go on. He never knows anything was wrong, but you may leave kind of pissed off. Nerve that guy. He didn't fix my food the way I wanted it. But then when he asks you, is everything okay? You didn't say anything. Then there is the aggressive way of dealing with it. Then the guy comes over and says, is everything all right here? And you say, hell no, dumbass, everything is not all right here. I want my coffee hot. This crap you've given me is lukewarm and it's old. I want some fresh coffee and I want it hot. I want my meat cooked the way I told you to cook it, not like this. And I want my vegetables crisp and my mashed potatoes warm. How the hell did you get here this morning anyway? Did your mama drop you off? That's a good way to get a loogie in your chow. But it doesn't get you what you want really, and it creates a problem with the waiter. And then you can be passive aggressive, and the waiter comes up and says, "Is everything all right here?" And you say, "Yeah, it's fine." And then he walks off, and you turn to your date or your spouse and say, "The nerve of that guy! Look at this crap! Everything," and you go through the whole litany of everything that's wrong, but you're going through it with the wrong person. You know, the date is not the one who's going to fix it for you, right? You go through it with the wrong person. You bitch about it, spill your water, loosen the lid on the salt shaker, and leave 3 cents for a tip when you leave. That's passive aggressive. I had a client once who would argue with her husband. She was a Southern girl from Tennessee. She had one of those Southern Belle accents. But she would tell me about how she would argue with him and he'd get loud and it scared her. So that when she would apologize because she was scared of him when it got all loud and mean and manly and whatnot. And that was just undesirable. So she'd apologize, even though she was right, just to get him to chill out. But she got her revenge on him because she would scrub the toilet with his toothbrush and then put it back in the holder and sit there and chat with him while he brushed his teeth. And all the while I'm thinking, did you kiss this guy? But anyway, that was me. That's passive aggressive. It might feel good to you because you know that you've gotten some kind of revenge, but I don't know how sweet that revenge is if the other person doesn't know that you've got it, right? And then there's an appropriate response to the waiter. And he comes up and he says, "Is everything all right here?" And you say, "Actually, it's not. I would like a fresh cup of coffee. This is kind of cold. And could you have the cook please warm up my food for me? It's not right either. Or cook my meat the way I asked for it to be cooked," or whatever the problem has to be. And you throw a please in there and a thank you in there. And you're respecting the waiter, who, by the way, isn't the cook, but still catches hell for it sometimes. And generally, you get what you want because they want you to be pleased with your meal, and they want a nice tip too. By the way, they work really hard, so tip them nicely. Multimodal therapy comes along, and multimodal basically means multiple modalities. It's comprehensive, it's systematic, it's holistic, in as much as it tries to treat the whole person, and it's an approach to behavior therapy. Remember that behaviorism started with, you don't need any insight, we're just going to fix the behavior, and if the behavior's fixed, we're done. But multimodal therapy has moved up into the modern era, and it's grounded in social cognitive learning theory. We get input, we get stimulus, we get reinforcements through the things that we do around us, and we reinforce other people environmentally. Multimodal approaches are technically eclectic. They use a lot of different techniques from whomever, They still have the insistence that all the behaviorists have on it being, I'll spit it out here in a minute, on it being evidence-based, on it being something that's empirical that you're doing. You can experiment with multimodal therapy, but if you do experiment with multimodal therapy, then you want to keep good records so that the things that you're doing will become data for someone else, and it will become an empirical technique. And it's multimodal therapy is applied to a wide range of problems. So, you've read all this for yourself, but in conclusion, behavior therapy is still evolving, and we're going to be looking at it again in the next chapter in our ABT and CBT and stuff that's we'll be taking a more in-depth look at it. There are third-generation approaches that include things like mindfulness and acceptance therapy, as well as dialectical behavior therapy. Now we're getting into a lot of headiness, a lot of cognition stuff, a lot of cognitive restructuring, teaching people how to think better, that type of thing. CBT, the cognitive behavior therapy that we just discussed, has proven to be very effective in working with substance use disordered clients, and that's why you see it in treatment centers, inpatient units, prison programs, halfway houses, therapeutic communities. Has been very good in those milieus with people. And that, I think, is about it with the behavior therapy. And I know some of you have had me in class face to face, and you think, well, Bushart, you don't talk as long to us from your garage as you do in the classroom. That's true, but I'm still getting the hang of this online teaching stuff, and we're not really in the classroom, so the interactive part of it is a little bit different, and I'm finding a pace with that. So if you have questions, or if there's anything like that, you can always email me, and I will try to get back to you in a timely manner. Have I got my? Yeah, I do. And my screen looked a little funny to me. I thought I was never mind. We'll just call it a day. All right. I'll see you in chapter 10.